ideas and understanding their values so that you can connect with them, communicate with them more effectively, as opposed to deciding what is good and what is bad before understanding other people. Kindness is always possible. As the Dalai Lama said, whenever possible, choose kindness. It is always possible. And so that I want to instill in the kids. And courageous basically means that they go forth and take risks that are valuable, and know that if they're doing so, if there is value to those risks, then they should go ahead and take them.
Awesome. Thank you both so much.
Thanks.
And I'm going to ask one more person. Let me see. How about Carmen? Would your sister be comfortable talking since she's new?
Listen. She's listening. She had stepped away for a moment, and she's not comfortable without having. She's one that has to process things before she.
Got it. Totally understand that. Okay, Matthew, you're up. I just put you on the spot, but I'm good at that, Matt. Thank you.
That's okay. You know, I threw it in the chat box. You know, in November, I got involved with the election because I didn't like what I was seeing in my country, and I was tired of, you know, feeling like I couldn't help. I had felt, you know, overwhelmed by these problems and didn't know what I could do, and decided that I wasn't going to let that be the case anymore. And I'm going to continue doing that from now on. And, you know, it's actually been a major turning point for me at this point in my life where, you know, I'm looking into, I don't want to say career change, but I've been in academia and I'm not interested in that industry anymore. And I want to be fighting this fight somewhere. Ideally, I'd like to maybe try and find a job. You know, Pam said I have lots to offer, and I hope she's right, because I think I could help people more in this area of activism and organizing.
Thank you so much. Now I'm going to put my son on the spot. He says no. Okay, not today, maybe another day. All right, anyone else want to share? It's one more person. Okay, so we'll move on to the next part then. Thank you guys for being willing to share that. I really appreciate it. Well, at this time, it's my honor to introduce three of my friends. Carmen Vela, who's going to ask you guys to, I'm not real sure exactly what perspective she's going to take, but it's say their names. And then Kate Katrubis is going to do a Bouquet of Humanity. If you guys were listening to, after, when the Attorney General spoke the other day, one of the attorneys from that group classified a specific part of that as a Bouquet of Humanity. So she's going to speak on that. And then Casey McKenzie, who's also a friend of mine, is going to talk. This is what Casey said. Casey takes on allyship. So in that order, if you guys would begin speaking, and you have like a slightly over a couple of minutes each to talk about that. So go for it, Carmen.
Okay. So say their names. I do have a short list of the names that I will be saying, but I want to preface, say something beforehand. You know, lately we've had, well, there's been shootings of our Black citizens, going on for a while. But the latest one, the young girl that was killed who was holding a knife, people are quick to say, well, she was holding a knife. But my sister and I attended an action day in the Capitol here in Texas about 3 years ago. And one of the experts that the Republicans had come in because they were trying to arm teachers, and they wanted teachers to have guns. And that expert said that young children can be taught to control their physiological response to an armed intruder. In other words, they can control their fear and their terror to confront an armed intruder. Yet police officers cannot control their physiological response to fear young people, children, if they're holding a gun, a weapon. And that just doesn't seem right. Yeah, they wanted children to throw things at an armed intruder. So why can't police throw something at a young girl holding a knife? Just, you know, instead of shooting her 4 or 5 times in the chest. So that's kind of like my my thought that it occurred to me the other day that we had attended that, and that's how they were saying that, you know, children can defend themselves, elementary children. So the names I have is Andrew Brown Jr. was killed in North Carolina just a few days ago. And of course, Breonna Taylor, Daunte Wright, Makia Grant, Sandra Bland here in Texas, Jordan Edwards here in Texas, 15 years old, by the way, Tamir Rice, 12 years old, Deborah Danner, she was a 66-year-old woman in New York who was having some kind of breakdown, yet the police shot her, 66 years old, and they shot her. Corinne Gaines, that was in Baltimore, she was shot, and then I think her child was also shot, but the child didn't die. Alfred Olango, another one who was having a mental breakdown. And of course, the one, Elijah McCain in Colorado. Also, he begged for his life and he just didn't know why the cops were treating him that way. And then one that I thought about also, his name was Micah Xavier Johnson. And he was actually a sniper in Dallas, I think in 2014, who shot several officers, I believe. And the reason I mentioned him, even though he was he was shooting people, is that he was blown up by the Dallas Police Department. Literally, they sent a robot and blew him up. That didn't sit right with me. To me, that was like a big dehumanization, even though because he was a Black man, that I think they were able to blow his body up in order to stop him. And so I know the police chief of Dallas resigned shortly after that, so maybe it didn't sit right with him because he's a Black man. But that's why I mentioned that they can do that to someone who is Black and who is shooting people, but others, they take them to Burger King and feed them after they've shot people in a church. So anyway, those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Carmen. Okay, Kate, you're next.
Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, I guess. Evelyn asked me to speak about the Bouquet of Humanity. And here's my take. So that term was used in the final argument, and he was talking about the witnesses of the lynching of George Floyd in the middle of the day in front of an audience, which is what a lynching is. It's a direct communication of showing that someone does not acknowledge the humanity of the person that they are lynching, and they want that expression to be made public as a fear tactic, as a means of control. What happened was that the very person that these police were trying to dehumanize and minimize, his very existence, his humanity was being squashed on the street. And these witnesses came upon just random people walking by, and they witnessed what was happening. And they did not let George Floyd's humanity go away. They were there every second, reminding these police of George Floyd's humanity. And the interesting thing is, I suspect that it was a deliberate act to murder him. I have no doubt. I think he knew exactly what he was doing when he continued to kneel on George Floyd's neck and tell his coworkers not to get off. So we have someone who has attempted to degrade someone based on the color of their skin, taking away humanity, attempting. And then you have the very people of all different colors, all different backgrounds, all different kinds, like beautiful flowers, coming and witnessing this and standing there and reminding him and reminding those police and not letting that happen. The very people, I mean, think about it, the very people he's minimizing and dehumanizing are the ones pointing out how inhumane he himself was being. So I think about this bouquet of humanity, these courageous people who didn't even know each other. They didn't know George. They didn't even know what George had possibly even done. They didn't care because they saw themselves. They saw a human being being tortured, and they did not stand by and let them get away with that. So when Evelyn was saying, can you speak about the bouquet of humanity? Bless you. That's what I heard, and that's what I saw. And I can only hope that this bouquet of humanity encourages the rest of us to have that bold strength to speak up no matter what's happening, and to never ever deny someone their humanity.
Thank you, Kate. You always speak from your heart, you and Carmen both, and I love it. Okay, Miss Casey.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, you're loud and clear.
Okay. I'm Casey McKenzie. I live in Longmont, Colorado. I breed Shire horses, which are one of the largest breeds of draft horses. And Miss Evelyn asked me to say a few words about what allyship means to me. As a white person, I think a lot about trying to use my privilege and my voice to help rid our nation of oppression and to build a community that is inclusive and that puts an end to systemic racism. So I try to take direction from friends of color and leaders who I respect in the civil rights space. I try to read a lot to learn about how we got where we are, so I can try to understand my place and how we move forward. And I reach out to lawmakers to push them to support legislation that will help the effort. And I get involved with campaigns for candidates who have purposefully anti-racist policy platforms. But I think that one of the important jobs that I have as an ally revolves around what goes on in my own household. I have two fantastic daughters. Harper is 15 and Evan is almost 12. And from the time they were little, we have always taken them to rallies and marches, pride parades, pretty much anything that can demonstrate the importance of showing our support for community members who may not be the same as us. I always read them books by diverse authors and about diverse characters. And when it was time for Harper to begin elementary school, we felt it was important to send her to our neighborhood school. We really wanted to support our neighborhood school. But after several years, we weren't sure that our family's values were being reinforced at school. And I did some research and I realized that we had access to some super progressive schools just in the next town over. And the educators at these schools are passionate about teaching their students to be upstanders, to be anti-racist, to be good community members. An example is that, and some of you may have been here a few weeks ago, I might have mentioned this, but Harper's a freshman and she took a class last quarter called Incarcerated America. And in the class, they read books like The New Jim Crow and Stamped from the Beginning. And they did field work with an organization that helps inmates with job skills and job placement upon reentry. And the students did research that became part of a booklet that these job seekers received to help them to know what their rights are and to find jobs. So they do work that really matters. And Evan's 5th grade class last year made signs when George Floyd was killed, and they marched. Again, work that really matters. So I think every day, not only about how I can be a role model for anti-racism and allyship to our daughters, but maybe, and probably more importantly, how I can learn from them. They are open and inclusive young women with a strong sense of justice and fairness, and they give me so much hope about what is possible when their generation can vote and lead. In the meantime, I'm trying to do what I can to hand them off something less broken with more possibilities for all.
Thank you, Casey. You guys have just been so awesome, the 3 of you. Thank you so much for being part of our support team today. At this time, it's my privilege to introduce my daughter-in-law, Amy Malone, who will introduce our guest speakers. Go for it, Amy.
All right. Good morning, everybody. In 2005, when I got my first job as an administrator at Beverly Hills High School, nothing intimidating at all about working at 90210. I remember vividly walking down to the athletic department at the high school to meet our athletic director, Carter Paysinger. My current principal at the time let me know, Carter is a bit of a legend. He's a good one to have on your side. Get to know him, ask lots of questions, and learn. Again, nothing intimidating at all about that. Carter was kind and welcoming, and I knew instantly I wanted to be a part of his circle. Carter had been a student at Beverly Hills, then a teacher, a coach, the athletic director, assistant principal, and finally the first Black principal at Beverly Hills High School. My principal was right. Carter was a legend. He touched the lives of so many kids. You literally can't go anywhere in the world without someone knowing Carter, wanting to stop him, talk to him for hours on end, just to say thank you for the impact he has had on their lives. In the winter of 2006, I was finally invited over to Carter's house after a football game. That's when I got to meet Karen. From an outsider's perspective, she was the ultimate football coach's wife. She was at every game, cheering on those kids, running home after the game to prepare the best late night dinners for the few lucky that were invited over. It was truly my true Friday Night Lights. Over the years, I rarely got to know Karen. She was way more than a football coach's wife. She didn't start in education, but to see her with kids, to hear about what she has done for the schools that she's worked with, it must have always been coursing through her veins. Karen has been in education for more than 20 years. I think it's 24, actually. She started as a kindergarten teacher, then a reading specialist, assistant principal, and now principal. In my opinion, Karen's greatest strength is her creative ways of engaging students, differentiating for all learners, and truly being a champion for all kids. She is a force to be reckoned with in the education field. Kids are lucky to have her, and her staff is fortunate enough to learn from one of the best. Professionally, these two have received great accolades and achievements. It's truly inspiring to be in their presence and talk education, but there's so much more to them than that. When I came to LA, I didn't know a soul. It took some time. They needed to check me out. But once I got the seal of approval, not only did Carter and Karen take me in as a friend, I am honored that we call each other family. It's special to be a member of the Paysinger family. I think you'll understand why after talking with them today. There are people who come into your lives for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. Carter and Karen were in it for a lifetime. I'm honored to introduce you to this group. Thanks for all you have done for the kids, for the teachers, and for me. I love you guys. Karen and Carter Paysinger.
Thanks so much, Amy.
Thank you, Amy.
So we don't have anything else to add. It can only go downhill from there. So thanks. Yeah, and I don't even know where to start. You know, this is really exciting. Evelyn, thank you so much for inviting us to the group, and Patrick is great seeing you, and you know, we're just excited to be a part. The speakers so far, you guys have been fantastic and thought provoking, and you know, all of those things. When it comes to racism, you know, we're pretty passionate about things that are happening in our society. I grew up with parents that were Martin Luther King disciples, and my three brothers and I, we understood that our parents wanted the best for us, and part of that was they didn't talk about racism in our house. I mean, rarely did we even broach the subject. In their opinion, people that were racist had the problem. We didn't have that problem, and it wasn't for us to discuss problems that other folks had, and so they wanted us to know that we can have and do whatever we want in this life if we put in the work and the time and the effort and did the right things, and so our upbringing was basically that, you know. Family, we've always had a really close family. Sunday dinners, I have three brothers, Karen's got two sisters, and we would have Sunday dinners up until the pandemic, probably for about 20 years, where every Sunday our entire family got together and had a dinner, and we would rotate the houses. But every Sunday we got together for dinner, and as Amy was saying, our family is extended. So we have friends that are not a whole lot, but we have friends that are that close to us where we call them family, but we do. And Amy and Patrick are absolutely part of our family, and they can tell you, I'm sure they get tired of us telling them, you know, we're getting together on this day for this reason, and you guys are welcome to come over. And you know, I tell Karen all the time, we gotta give them a break. Then maybe they don't want to be around us this week. I don't know, Karen, you want to speak before I start talking about racism? Because once I get started on that, I'm like.
No, I just want to add that my family, we're pretty much the same as Carter's family. My dad was very outspoken in his views, and so, you know, he basically felt the same way. People should accept you for who you are, and if they don't, I'm not gonna say what he would say because it was an expletive, you know. But basically, you know, like Carter said, it's not your problem, it's theirs. And so for us, growing up, my father was my parents owned their own business, but my father also worked for the city of Los Angeles. And so he worked his way up to a supervisory position. And he was a person who talked to everyone and interacted with every, you know, you could be a person walking down the street and he might ask you, well, why are you walking like that? And, you know, they would strike up a conversation. That's the type of person he was. And so for us, you know, like I said, we had friends. We lived in South Central, but we had friends of many races and religions that would come and visit us at our home, and we would go to theirs. And so that's how we grew up. You know, we grew up accepting everyone, and that everyone is a human being, and you know, we're all God's creatures.
So my you know, today 2021, and I was watching CNN yesterday or a couple days ago, and they were talking about Washington D.C. becoming a state, and I was listening to some of and this was a discussion in the House, and I was listening to some of the reasons why the House representatives didn't think that Washington D.C. should become a state. And when you hear comments like, you know, Washington D.C. is a working class community, and if they become a state, that would take away from their identity. You know, those code comments for, you know, let's keep everybody in their place. It's really distressing. You know, I grew up in the 60s, and I tell kids that I've taught and coached, and family members, you know, when you talk about civil rights movement, it's not 2 or 3 generations ago. That was something that I experienced in my lifetime. I was a kid, but I experienced it in my lifetime, right? And not really understanding why, you know, Black people were being shot with fire hoses and dogs attacking them, and these are all people that some of which could still be alive, right? And experienced it. Just a real quick story. My dad, who just recently passed away, was a sports fanatic. He followed our careers when we played high school and college sports, and then when we came back to coach, and he and my mom. And so I had tickets to go to the Riviera Country Club for the PGA Tour, and I told my dad, you know, my brothers and my dad, let's all go out there. We'll have a great time. And my dad refused to go. He just said, no, I'm not going to be able to go. And we didn't press him on it. But my brothers and I went. And afterwards, I asked my mom, I said, so why? What's up with Pops? How come why didn't he want to go? And she said, just leave it alone. He's not going into any country club. He will never go into any country club. And just and both my mom and dad have passed away, but we still don't know why. Something happened that he could never get over. And I don't know if it happened to him personally but those are the stories that my generation and generations before me have, where there were things that they couldn't even talk about that were so egregious. And so for me, I take a little different approach when it comes to racism. I'm not the activist that's out there speaking publicly about it. But anybody that's around me knows exactly how I feel, and I'll engage in discussions and conversations about it all the time, and I'm always there to help. And people, especially over the last year, there's been so many people that have talked about, you know, white people that and Asians that have said, you know, really didn't know. And for Black people, it's hard for us to understand, initially anyway, how you didn't know. We've been trying to tell you. We've been, you know, I was, you know, I had a friend of mine who, Stephen Fenton, he and I wrote a book together, and Stephen asked me about, this was right after George Floyd. He said, you know, on Facebook, there's some other Beverly alums that have written that they've all experienced some of the same, you know, issues that we're hearing about in the news when it comes to police. And he said that they're talking about here in Beverly Hills that they experienced it. And I told Stephen, I do not know a Black male that has not experienced it. I don't know a Black adult male that has not experienced some sort of police, and I'm not going to call it brutality, but abnormalities. Where I was driving home from playing basketball one evening, and a police officer pulled me over, frisked me, had me sit on the curb, tore my car apart, pulled the dashboard, parts of the dashboard off, and after about 15 minutes or so, told me that he was looking for drugs, didn't find any, and I can go on about my way. But I had to put my car back together before I could. I mean, in Beverly Hills, from I started there as a young teacher in my early 20s, and one day I got stopped by, and I was stopped multiple times. And one day I got stopped going from the middle school, the K-8 to the high school, which was less than a mile. And the police officer stopped me, and I told him, listen, I work in the school district. I'm a teacher at the high school. And he apologized and said that in their roll call earlier that morning, they were instructed to stop every Black male between the ages of 18 and 35. So the mayor of Beverly Hills at that time, for political reasons, and this had to be months after that incident with me, somebody told him that I had that experience. So he came to me and he wanted to file a class action. He's a former mayor at this time. He wanted to file a class action suit against Beverly Hills and use me as the face of the class action suit. Well, you didn't have to be a brain surgeon to figure out who would be the biggest loser in that. You know, this guy, for political reasons, did not like the current mayor, and he was the former mayor, could take me, who you know, some people thought I was popular in the Beverly Hills community, and make me the face of that, and I refused to do it because now I'm just a pawn. I'm a pawn for their political reasons. So I mean, it's so complicated, all of this, and at the same time, it's blatant and in your face. And I became the principal of Beverly Hills High School, and you know, a lot of times I think about this, and I have no way of knowing if this is true or not. But I would think to myself, what I'm going through has got to be like a small piece of what Barack Obama went through when he became the president of the United States. Because when I became the principal, I thought, we did it, we're there. That was just the beginning. Now I was the target. And after my first year, a couple board members left, a couple more board members came in. And before I say this, I became the principal on a 3-2 vote. Once I became the principal and hit the ground running, after about 6 months, I was brought to a board meeting, and they wanted to get an update on all of the things that we had accomplished. And I went through this litany of accomplishments in the first 6 to 8 months, and then they revoted, and they voted me in 5-0. The 2 that voted against me before were still on the board. They just, for political reasons, voted 5-0, again, for their political reasons. Once the board changed hands and there was another person that felt the way they did, that's when the fight began. You know, it was you know, Amy was with our administrative team, and we were working together. We had the highest test scores in the school's history in the first year. We had the 3 highest test scores in the school's history in the first 3 years. And I had a board member at a board meeting say to me, and this is public now, right? At a board meeting, she said to me, I'd like to talk to you privately to find out what you did, inferring we did something illegal to get the test scores as high as we got the test scores. And later I found out, I shouldn't say later, before I get to that, this is the same board member when I was running to become a board member, running to become the principal, came to my office. I was an assistant principal, and she said, "Why are you doing this to us? I thought you were going to go to CIF. CIF is the governing body of high school sports and in the state of California, and I work for CIF as a board member." And she says, "I thought you were going to go work for CIF. Why are you doing this to us?" I had another board member come to me and in my office ask me, "Did you vote for Barack Obama?" she said, he's for big government, I'm for small government, and I just need to know, did you vote for Barack Obama? I mean, these are all things that, what do I do with that, right? Where do I go with that? Other than to my home and to my family. And I mean, as soon as you go public with this, that's when you get killed, because like so many people have said over the last year, we didn't know this was happening. And we were still trying to tell you what how do I go out and say that a board member came to me to tell me that, you know, basically asked me, why am I doing this to them by running for to become the principal? But I do have to tell you, one of the reasons why I continued to run to become the principal was because of those interactions. There are too many Black people that have fought too hard and died to give us the opportunities that we have today. And Evelyn's question earlier about the legacy, Karen and I wrote in there, we wanted to show by example that you don't have to allow society to dictate who you are. And so for me, it was on then. We're going after this. And we want them to know that we're not backing down to this. I am so inspired by the number of people that have stepped up and not only acknowledged what's happening, but are willing to step up and to fight for change. And I think that's the biggest difference between what was happening in the 60s and what's happening today. A lot of it is what we're doing here: social media and technology and you know, video cameras, and you know, the Emmett Till story just rides with me. I mean, wherever I go, I just it's something that just won't leave me. And so anyway, that's a little bit about where I am when it comes to racism and anti-racism and fighting it. And it's real easy, you know, with over the last 4 years, and you can see some of the blatant things that have been said and done in our politics, and you know, giving somebody a drink of water while they're a glass of water or a bottle of water while they're standing in line to vote. I mean, really? And this is done in broad daylight. This is not something done behind closed doors. This is something that's done and just thrown out because there's such a lack of respect for the intelligence of the American people that politicians feel like we can say and do whatever we want, they'll still vote for us. You have anything?
Well, I just wanted to say that, you know, the only way we can change things, one, is to have a forum like you all have created here, but to also make friends with people who don't know you, who don't look like you, and learn their story, you know, learn their culture. We're all basically the same. Well, we all are the same. When you cut, everybody's blood is red. We all have the same organs. I mean, you know, the difference may be, you know, our cultural experiences, you know, it may be economic experiences, what part of the country we live in. Those are really the only differences. We all pretty much aspire for the same things, you know, to be able to provide for our families, to make sure that our kids and our grandchildren and, you know, and our family are safe and healthy. You know, we want an educational system that educates everybody, not just those who can afford an education. You know, we want opportunities. We all want the same things. And so I think once we get to know each other, then I think that's where, you know, and once we can talk with one another and listen, you know, I think that's when things will start to change. And our young people are the ones that are going to lead the change. They are going to be the ones to lead the change.
one other thing I wanted to say before, Evelyn, before we give it back to you is not only do non-Blacks, you know, we're talking about white people understanding and learning, Blacks have to understand and learn as well. And I say that because we all know what we're going through. And me as a principal of Beverly Hills High School, I took a lot of heat in the Black community because I quote, took my talents to the white community. I'm the executive director now at a Catholic high school, St. Bernard High School, and understanding that me working at Beverly Hills High School, for Blacks anyway, you know, you have Black people that believe all police are bad. You have Black people that believe all white people are bad. And it's education on both ends, you know, and I worked at Beverly Hills High School, which was predominantly Jewish community, and now I'm in a predominantly Catholic community, and you just see it on so many levels where there's so much to learn. There's so much for me to learn. There's so much for all of us to learn about each other. And as Karen was just saying, we're all in this together.
Thank you guys so much. That was so powerful and just caused me to really reflect on how I grew up too. So I just really appreciate you speaking from your heart. And as you were talking, one thing that crossed my mind is, and it's just the way that my mom raised us, my parents raised us, is that you have to talk. Communication in this setting of trying to be an anti-racist, breaking down racial barriers, we have to talk. And you know what's going to be probably the most difficult thing that I hear people talking about too is that, well, I can't talk to them because they're Trump supporters. We've got to talk. Trump supporters, Biden supporters, whomever, we've got to talk, because just like you guys dare to share your story, to me, that's how it begins. You know, I remember my grandmother sharing stories with us when we were kids. And that storytelling has to continue. And we've got to be able, like you've already said, to be listeners and communicators and have whatever space is available to us to share and breaking down the barriers through communication. And you know what? We don't listen to each other enough. People are talking and we're forming opinions about what they just said. Let me see what I can say to rebut this. I don't believe it. You know, all those kinds of thoughts. We've got to be active listeners. So I really appreciate you guys being here and just sharing passionately your experiences. They're real. But one thing that you said though is that we've got to, as African Americans, we've got to take ownership for the way that we're thinking about people too.
That's right.
You know, sure, we've had these tough experiences, but you know what? We don't want to be all put in one pool, and we can't put other groups and cultures into one pool. Not groups of people are in those groups of people. They're individuals, and so we've got to be able to, as my mother taught us, embrace humanity, embrace people, see the righteousness in people before you see the bad. And my mother would always say, "Go look in the mirror. What do you see? If you're perfect, girl, you need to go in somewhere." That's what she would say. So no one is perfect. We all have stuff that we have to deal with. So thank you for this awesome reminder. And thank you guys for your time, for being here. And at this time, I do have 2 questions. And if any of you guys have questions that you would like to pose, please write them in the chat box. But I have questions from Blair and from Pam. And since you guys are here, I can read your questions if you'd like, or you can speak them yourselves. What would you prefer? Okay, you want me to read it? Okay, let me see if I can find it. Pam, what about you? You want to speak yours, or should I read it? Okay, since you're muted, I can't hear you. Can you unmute and let me know?
I'd like you to read it, please.
Okay, great. I will do that. Give me just 1 minute here. Okay, so Pam posed the first question. She says, if possible, please provide pointers for adherence to MLK's call for agape love towards your enemies. I find it hard to extend this love to racists.
Well, you know,
That's a tough one.
it goes again. It goes back to education though, because
Yeah.
I think look at it. You've got teenagers that are racist. Where did they learn that? Some of these kids are not old enough to have those type of experiences to feel that strongly against another race. They're learning that somewhere, and so extending love could mean what Evelyn is talking about. Just educating, just talking to people, and you know, I hear all the time from folks, uh, uh, you know, well, you're pretty well spoken. Well, you know, that's code for right. So if these young folks that are racist are learning whatever they're learning, it's only going to get worse unless they can see another side of what they're being taught. And so communicating and talking and not being afraid to speak to people, I think is key. That's the best I can do with that.
I think it's difficult. It is difficult um, to try to show love toward someone who is racist, who hates you so much just because of what they've heard or whatever. I think for me, along with Carter, I think a lot of it also can be taught in school. And I know some people may have a problem with it, but that's what education is. It's all about learning. And so when as educators, you know, we've got to find literature, have speakers, even, you know, folks come in and speak to students who are who are like them, who are their age, just to share their story. I think that's a start. But it's hard. It's hard to love a racist because sometimes it's no reasoning with them. And so you just have to hear what they're saying and just move on and understand that one day there will be an awakening for them.
Yeah, I'm going to add one point to that too. As far as MLK is concerned, you know, because I think we have to look at it from the perspective that he was a Christian. And I just believe that he took his speaking and walking orders from what he learned from the Bible. You know, his father was a minister, you know, and that's what he always espoused that. And for him, I think about all of the events that he had. He started from a point of love. And for him, that love really did not have any limits. And so I'm not saying there's a difference between love and boundaries. I think we have to have boundaries with racists and those folks who are not racist, but just mean people. We got to have boundaries. And this is I think my daughter gave me this example. When we're talking about trying to respond to this question. So let's say, for example, your neighbor's a racist and you live next door, right next door, and their house is on fire. Would you call the fire department? You can show them that you are not like them by doing just the opposite. Because a racist wants you to do what they want you to do. And my mother always taught us, do not level yourself with people who are being mean. Rise above it.
When they go low, we go high.
That's right. You have to rise above it. You know, you have to know what the boundaries are, and you got to set those boundaries. Boundaries are for them, and they're also for you. But you know what? The love part of it, I think you have to determine in your own heart, how do you want to feel? So it's up to each of us, and every situation is so different. But we have the opportunity to break down those barriers every single time. And I'm just going to make this as brief as I can. Our indivisible group, when we first organized, I think we did about 4 weeks of study through Resistance. I think it was called Resistance School, and that was a segment of Harvard University. And one of the things that we learned, and it was really, like you're saying, Karen, it's tough, But they told, in one of the training, it showed young people that we had really organized this part of the conversation. And I'm going to use two words, parallel and intersection. You can't walk parallel to somebody. You got to intersect with them. You intersect with them through storytelling and all of that. And that was during the time, it was like, I think it was 2017. You know, Trump had already been elected. And a lot of the people were saying, you know, I just can't do it. I just can't talk to a racist. And the bottom line that I remember here was this: if you cannot talk to a racist, you are dehumanizing. You don't see them.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're going to make a change, we've got to talk to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Is it going to be easy? Absolutely not. It's going to be tough, but it might be just like this right here. One conversation at a time, and they might cuss you out, and you don't have to cuss back.
No.
You might want to. We might want to, but that's leveling. You don't need to level yourself. And I just heard my mother now. After a period of time, though, she would say this: I need to remove my foot. That means she's tried, she's tried, but we're done now.
Mm-hmm.
I need to remove my foot.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say for me personally, so that my heart feels okay with me, I have to try.
Oh, absolutely. You have to try.
Yeah, yeah.
You have
Okay, so thank you for that. Let me see, where's my other one? Somebody is on, someone is mute. There we go. Okay, this is Blair's question. She says, my question about racism in the workplace. She says, corporations are spending money on so-called diversity training, but we all hear stories about it being lukewarm or ineffective at worst. I'm sorry, at worst, incompetent training can cause a backlash. What are essential ingredients of effective racial equity education?
We hired a consultant for that very purpose at our school, and it's he's working with our staff, and it's a multi-year program, and it's you know, we had the starting point. To answer your question, Evelyn, the starting point is developing trust that and respect for everyone involved. So, you know, if I don't trust you and I don't respect you, or I'm not sure if you would respect me, then I'm probably not going to be honest about my comments, which means that whatever training that's happening it will be ineffective or lesser effective. And so it begins with trust. I just want to understand where you're coming from. I want to understand who you are, how you were raised, you know, some of your experiences, you know, all of that information about each other, just so before you even start talking about the issues at hand, just developing that sense of respect and trust. I don't know, Patrick, you've been in some of those. What do you think?
First of all, that was the first time that I had ever been part of any kind of conversation like that, where a consultant came in, and the examples that he gave and the input from everybody, for me, was an awakening also. I thought I knew some stuff, you know, and I think we all do. I think we go into a situation thinking, well, I knew that. Oh, but I didn't know that. And I didn't know that. And that is the listening aspect of it as well. And hopefully still learning.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I think also, if, you know, when corporations or even school districts, you know, we have restorative justice trainings at our school, and we have restorative justice teachers at almost every school to, you know, talk about things like this. But I think as if we're talking about the workplace, those who are in charge have to believe what the information that they're delivering to their employees that they, you know, that they want them to buy into. So if the supervisor or whoever, if they don't buy into it, how do you expect the employees to? And so I think there's got to be buy-in from the top. And I also feel like those who are in charge, they have to hold people accountable. And you don't have to do it in a way that's condescending or demeaning. But if this is the way that your business is going to go, if we're trying to rid our company or even our school, I see a question here in the chat about raising concerns with the administrators about racism at the school. You have to address it. You can't just do a PD on it and then, you know, think that the teachers or the employees are just going to go with it, because that's not going to happen. Some will, most won't. And so the question about at school, I think you have to bring it up to the principal, bring it up to the teacher. If nothing happens, then take it to the next level. Because a lot of school districts are how do I want to say? They are they have programs that deal with these things. And so it's got to be pointed out, and people have to be held accountable. And those in power have to believe it. Otherwise it's not going to work.
And in order to get to deal with the root of the problem, we go back to, I need to understand more about you. So Evelyn, we were talking about you know, loving a racist, right? We hear their views, but how did they get to that point? I need to, the more I learn and the more I know about how they got to that point, the better chance we will have of breaking down some barriers. And the more they learn about how I got to the point that I'm at, right? So and that's the same thing with these the consultants that we have working with us now, is just talking. We're at a stage now where we're talking about backgrounds and who we are and where we came from and the beliefs that we had and all of those things, so that we can all understand better how we all got to where we are.
Right. And I think, and Carmen said too in the chat, is that it can't be something that you check off a box, because that's easy. It's going to take that dialogue, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And Kate, I'm going to, do you mind kind of expanding on that? Because she and I have talked actually about a situation that she has experienced with her children. And this is very, very important to her to, and, you know, I shared with her basically what you just said. You know, you got to be consistent with it. And if that doesn't prove to be the result that she needs to go further. Is that what you're saying, Karen? And
me? Yes, absolutely. And, you know, I would say, even, you know, have conversations with other parents, because I bet you're not the only one. And so if it's a group of you, there's power in numbers.
Yeah.
And I would be willing to bet that the administrator has heard the concerns before, but may not know how to address them, or may just, you know, push them under the rug as, you know, that's just some problem parent complaining.
That's kind of how I took it, because my son was saying that there was a boy in his math class that was making fun of Asian people just overall. And he was, you know, saying, Mom, he makes fun of them. And he also says derogatory things about homosexuals. And so at least the teacher addressed it when he saw it. But then when the teacher leaves the room, the student teacher doesn't do anything about it, doesn't feel comfortable when these things happen. And it's not even just that class. He's having issues with, in his PE class, there's a group of boys that say very sexually explicit things they say derogatory things about non-straight people in general and minorities. And he finally did approach his teacher and said, you know, they're saying these things. And the teacher just, Nathan said he felt pretty dismissed. Like the guy went up to the kids and said a couple things and nothing happened. So, and when I wrote to the principal about the Asian comment, and I made some recommendations. I said, maybe there's, you know, you could send something out, like when people have strep throat at school and they send out like a letter saying, here's how to identify it, here's how to avoid it. So I said, perhaps you can do something for parents, you know, to identify these behaviors in their kids. And there's plenty of very, I think it would be beneficial to send something like that out to, you know, if your kids are inadvertently being racist, they don't know it's racist, whatever, to have that kind of literature available. And he kind of sent me, I told Evelyn I was really disappointed in the response because it was basically, oh, well, that's too bad. And of course, we don't encourage that behavior. Next time it happens, tell someone. And my feeling was, well, the whole point is I am telling you.
Right, you did.
And how, you know, because I'm not Asian, it doesn't matter what, you know, I kind of wondered that if I were Asian or if my son were Asian, would he have heard what I was saying? And how badly hurt do people who are under attack right now have to be for someone to listen and prevent it altogether? So I was really angry at this lukewarm response going, oh, next time, you know, we're looking at it. And it was just such a non-commitment answer that I was very frustrated. So I think I'm going to write yet another email about the thing that's happening in his PE class and say, I don't know if you've been made aware that this happened or that this is happening, but here's another example of racism happening in your school. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, real quick. I think whenever possible too, Kate, that will help. And Amy can speak to this as well. In-person meetings with the principal carries a whole lot more weight than an email.
Oh.
Yeah.
Because now that principal knows that this is an issue that was so important to you that you took the time to come down here, which means that it's not going to go away and I've got to deal with it. You know, obviously follow it up with an email so that you have it in writing, but as an administrator, issues that come to us in person are pretty important.
Okay.
That's exactly what I was going to say. As a parent, I remember when my daughter was in 5th grade, I did write letters because I was teaching at the time. I'm thinking, okay, I need to take a day off and I need to go. And from that point on, when Miss Malone walked in the building, they didn't want to see me. But my daughter didn't have any other problems after that meeting, though. And I just went very gently to the teacher and I said, you know, you have a great classroom. You know, my daughter has talked about some of the teaching that you've done. Give her credit first and then dive in. I'll tell you what I did though before I went, because I'm thinking I want to go cool, calm, and collected. I called the Texas Education Agency and I said, what do I do? Got the right department. They said, first of all, you're going to say you appreciate the time that they spend teaching, not just your child, but teaching. And then get down to the fact that you are there for your child. So I did that, and I just felt empowered before I went. And because my daughter was shy, you know, she wasn't going to say a lot, but when she came home one day and had to call a friend to help with math that she should have gotten the understanding at school, and she didn't, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I could barely breathe. It's like, are you kidding me? She's getting paid and she didn't help you, and she yelled at you when you went to ask for help? No more. Yeah, no more.
Yeah.
And I also think if at the school we have what's called chat with the principal, well, that's what I have at my school. Other schools have like coffee with the principals, where the principal may meet with parents once a month, you know, just to talk about what's going on. That might be a time to bring it up too, because you have other parents there. And that's when you could find out that there were other, there may have been other instances as well. And like Evelyn said, you're not gonna, be confrontational with it. You kind of come out with it kind of smooth, so that, the principal doesn't feel like he's being attacked. But at the same time, you're letting them know, hey, this is what's happening at your school. What are you going to do about it? And you're saying it in front of other parents. So now they're looking at them like, yeah, okay, now what?
Mhm.
Yeah.
That goes back to checking off the box, right? So when you send an email and he responds, he just checked off the box.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Amy, you want to have an input here? What do you think?
No, I mean, that was a great comment because Carter's exactly right. It's like, let's get this email out of my inbox and done. And I've sent an email, I've addressed it. But when you come in person, it's very, very different. And you're there advocating for kids who aren't your own. Which absolutely, when a parent comes in to see me to talk about the injustices happening to a kid that is not their own, it resonates with me. And then you have to really take action. So you got this. They need you. They need your voice.
Definitely. It's really a little terrifying what these kids are saying. There was a whole thing that Maya said. My daughter, I have twins, and they're both in 6th grade, and what she had heard in the halls was that April 24th was Rape Day.
Oh.
That's on TikTok. I mean, and Nathan had heard these other boys going, I can't wait for April 24th. And it just is mind boggling how these little kids are talking. I guess I shouldn't be shocked, but I am. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this stuff. And do they even know what they're saying? So I appreciate your input because I like I said, I was very disappointed in his response, and I think that it needs to be a priority, especially right now in what's happening in the world. And and Nathan, bless his heart, he's trying to speak up. He came home on Friday and he was so flustered. He said, "Mom, I was talking about kids, about white privilege, and there was like 10 of them yelling at me and saying it's no such thing." And he was just, had all these kids on him, on his case. And I said, "Buddy, I am so proud of you. Good for you for speaking up, because that's the time when it's hard and that's the most important time to speak up." And so I told him how proud I was, and not everybody's able to hear it right now. But I think, if these kids are bringing it up on their own, I think the principal should make a point of bringing it into the conversation, for classrooms and things like that. So
sorry to interrupt, but he sounds like a really cool kid.
He's an awesome kid. He is. He's a good guy. He told another boy, the same one that was picking on Asians, he had already told them to stop being homophobic, and that what he was saying was cruel and stuff like that. And I'm just like, wow, good for you. That's fantastic.
Listen, thank you guys for your comments on that. I'm going to go to Kenneth now because he did post something in the chat. Kenneth, can you hear me? If you can, could you kind of expound on those two things you put in the chat? And I think that was in response to Pam's concern. It gives a little bit more information for Pam. So do you mind expanding on that information?
Certainly. The Daryl Davis is a real inspiration. He just he's done so much more for Black people than I have even considered of. I wouldn't even think of going to a member of the Ku Klux Klan. It seems like it would be a total waste of time. I tend to be a little bit cynical, but he has done so and has been very consistent and done that for 30 years. And there is a TV program about it I watched. I don't know if that's in the link from NPR or not, but it is a good article about that. The movie is exceptional. And it's the acting is great. I just love the movie. The Best of Enemies. And the hero of the story is this very determined Black woman. It's based on a true story. And she struggles with it. I mean, it's very clear about her struggles. It's not something that's just easy and easy breezy and just a piece of cake. She struggles with it, but she does it, and it's fabulous. And I highly recommend it.
Well, thank you for that. We are slightly over time, and that information that he's talking about, if you guys want to copy that link from the chat, it's in there. I think I've seen this article that you're talking about, and it is quite powerful too. Just the audacity that this person would even confront a KKK member is, and then even create a space for change is really awesome. Karen and Carter, thank you so much for being here, and to Kate and Casey and Carmen and Amy, thank you guys. This was really powerful from my perspective. We just need to have more conversations like this. I really appreciate you all being here and just sharing from your heart. As we get ready to close, and like I say, we're a little bit over time, and I apologize for that, but that's what happens when people are talking and learning from each other. If you were going to have a call to action, Carter and Karen, what would you say?
I would say, I go back to what you said earlier. Don't be afraid to speak up, and look to engage in conversations about everything that's happening in our society. But too often we shy away or walk away from those conversations, and I think that we need to walk toward those conversations. And as Karen said earlier, especially with people that don't look like you.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
So we have those words, and we just need to use them more effectively. And I would also like to challenge those of you, during our last meeting, we had I thought a very tough conversation, white people talking to white people, and it was powerful. Some people laughed about that, not on this in our setting, but otherwise, people that I thought were my friends laughed about that. White people talking to white people, what is that all about? It's about white people talking to white people about racism. And it was powerful. So that challenge you guys received was to begin writing your personal autobiography. How did it start for you? And I have to tell you something, within less than a week after that assignment, Pam, who posed the first question today, sent me an message, and she said, my autobiography is finished. What do I do with it now? That was wonderful. So thank you for taking it and running away with it, Pam. And what I would like to do is to ask Pam and Matt and Casey, Carmen, Brian, you're here. Kenneth, you're here, and Kate, if you guys can hang around just for a few minutes, and I know that we're over time. Paul and Ivy, if you guys can hang around just for a few minutes, we're going to strategize on what Pam needs to do with her autobiography, and the rest of you who are going to be writing those too. And our next meeting is going to be May 23rd, and we invite you guys back. We'll provide more information about this, but it's going to be related to those personal autobiographies. And for those of you who were not part of that strategy at that time, if you would like to be, we can provide information for you. And what we're going to do probably is to have a repeat of that meeting, because it was based on what you guys are saying, it was that good. And I think that's going to be one way that we move forward, to start taking a look at ourselves and to see, where did it start and what can I do to start really breaking down and breaking through those barriers of racism. So once again, it seems like thank you is not enough, but that's all I have to offer right now. This has been absolutely wonderful. So thank you for your time. I know you guys could have been doing something else, but I appreciate it.
Thank you guys for inviting
Thank
us.
you.
This was awesome.
Appreciate it.
You guys